Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this TAD talk. My name is Flora Gaetani. I'm a faculty member of Master TAD, and I'm the Master Communication Manager. I greet you, our guest, Roberto Giolito, to whom we will give the floor in a few minutes, waiting for everyone to be connected. I greet also Fausto Brevi, director of the Master, to whom I will immediately give the floor and who will tell us a few words about the Master, who organizes this event, and the past one and the future one. And Alice Pignatel, coordinator of the Master, who will answer your question about the Master at the end of this speech. Before introducing our welcome guest, I leave the floor to our director, Fausto Brevi.
Welcome everybody. As Flora already said, my name is Fausto Brevi, and I'm here to introduce today's event. Well, it's me because I am the director of the Transportation and Automobile Design course, but I'm also the teacher in charge for the car design culture lessons and the creator of TADtalks format. But first of all, let me say thank you to Flora Gaetani that is managing this event, but mainly because she's much more than only this, working a lot in the backstage of these events. So thank you very much, Flora. But now it's time to introduce our host, Mr. Roberto Giolito. Roberto Giolito today is from Fiat Chrysler Automobiles. Well, that's because sometimes happen that companies change their name, their owners, and their organization. Indeed, Giolito joined the Fiat Style Center in 1989. After some years as industrial designer, mainly involved with furniture and interior design companies. In Fiat Style Center, he was involved in designing innovative prototypes, but also innovative production cars. The most famous of them probably is the Fiat Multipla. In 2002, he was the first director of the new Fiat Group Advanced Design Center, where the 3P1 prototype was born to be highlighted at the Geneva Motor Show in 2004. As you probably know, the success of this prototype was really impressive and pushed the Fiat managers to develop it in a production car. That is the new Fiat 500 available from 2007. Right 50 years after the launch of the original iconic Fiat 500 by Dante Giacosa. Later in 2008, he was nominated Eurostar of the Year by Automotive News magazine and was awarded the prize for innovation in the design section by the President of the Italian Republic. In 2011, the Fiat 500 was awarded the Compasso d'Oro by the Italian Association for Industrial Design. Giolito in 2015 was appointed head of the Heritage Division of FCA Italy to direct and coordinate a team committed to the protection of the heritage of all the group's historic cars. So we have decided to invite him today because of his proof knowledge of the history of cars with a special understanding of car design that is not usual in people involved in car history, blended with a visionary look at the future of mobility. So now it's time to stop my voice. Roberto, it's your time.
Okay, so it's a pleasure, Fausto, to be invited to the TAD Talk. It's a way also to interconnect with students, with designers, with people interested on mobility. And for the occasion, I prepared a very challenging presentation, not in the number of slides. So please don't be worried, but because I want to tell especially about an interconnection from the 30s of the last century. So the 30s years in the 19th century to the vision to the future mobility. And this is a way where I can show you, sharing, of course, what I prepare for you. So my career as a designer in the Fiat Group and now in FCA has always been a balanced share of prototype studies and mass production models, and including some work cars such as the 2007 Fiat 500, the 500, and others that were more successful in Europe and in South America, as the Fiat Uno, so the 2010 car, Fiat Uno, and the Fiat Palio, for instance. So the way to tell you about coming from the car of the people to the people of the mobility is an occasion to talk about the real design sense of mobility and why car designers has been so important in this path. For this reason, I base my practical experience. I believe that automotive designers has never received the authoritative approval to be recognized as a noble state of design thinking. It's a pity. And being more often than not relegated in the scope of product styling or redesign operations. You know how ugly sounds redesign sometimes, no? In the microcosm of automotive designers, there's a clear distinction between designers and stylists. The first focus on interior design and general layout studies, shaping the external volume at a later stage, while the second directly approach to the concept at an outer shape with the practice constitutes the most distinctive aspects of automotive designers. Nowadays, this differentiation could be disappearing because the vision of the new mobility form is transversal across the passenger compartment and its packaging, and will lead to combining transport services with a study of the onboard experience and the infrastructures, which will be called to interact. Nevertheless, in the automotive sector, the two disciplines of the interior and exterior design survive well separated due to the inherent complexity of car project development and to the operational and methodological peculiarities which characterize the individual sector. And parallel to the car design microcosm, the world of architecture is known to be one of the fields of study and application most active in defining new scenarios and identifying the coordinates of new urban settings and social life in general. Advanced design departments has been operational since the 1970s. To create something similar in the automotive sector, they were specifically established to create the scenarios and the prototypes suited to the shape of the future vision of a company and to grant greater freedom to designers in producing ideas without the constraint of guaranteeing full feasibility according to the current standards. That is why, in this environment, it has always been easier to conceive more visionary creations and allow the skills of each individual designer to span from the study of exterior or interiors and to conceptualizing a whole vehicle. Advanced design has been my sector of choice since the beginning of my career in the field of car design, and I had the opportunity to establish the Advanced Design Center in 2001 in the Fiat Group, conducting research for all the brands of the company. This is also the sector in which work methods and interconnections with the outside research work trend to resemble those of the architectural design firms more closely. And in my specific case, I have had many occasions for exchange and collaborations with the firms of some of the most famous architects in the world over the years. Historically, however, it would appear that architects has always lacked a fundamental factor in connoting the appearance and behavior over a century of recent history, which in practice has been highly influenced by the speed and by the movement itself. Turning back to the specific fields of the history of transportation, there have been moments where they have redefined the car paradigm itself. Cars also have, albeit marginally, remodeled our city and our culture, making streets wider, transforming plots and lands and forests into car parks, and even making the air unbreathable. So a disaster. A new emerging vision is leading us, even faster than in the past, to redefine the paradigm of what is a car, and with it, the shape of our homes and the objects that reside there, which could radically change our space in just the next 10 years. It's amazing that these insights, which are focusing today in a more defined manner and with precise roadmaps on the developments of the technology and components, appear quite obvious, and we ask ourselves why all this had not been done before. And now we go to this chapter that is the rationalism in the automobile, the car for everyone. In the 30s were the period in which we began to concretely think about the plausible forms of car conceived as means of transport for many more users and produced on a larger scale, bringing out the brightest idea in terms of process optimization, rationality in the use of materials and components, replication of product machinery, and in general, reduction of the weight of vehicles, according to their efficiency in containing their operating costs. The accentuation of political tensions and the aftermath of the Great Depression were the accelerators of the production of new ideas regarding the construction schemes and vehicle architectures. The car abandons the image of exclusive goods, of differentiation between those who own it and those who dream of it, without having the slightest change of gaining possession of it, contrasting an idea of speed, dynamism, and organization that will start from the reconstruction wars of the first conflict worldwide to coming through in the conversion towards the infrastructural wars that would be the connective tissue of the cars of great diffusion. Conceived for families and for middle class, they provide a dream for emancipation and progress which immediately has a great impact on the collective imagination and the orientation of the consumption. It is this precise moment that only apparently the origins of certain revolutionary ideas on the conception of some vehicles architectures that will remain the true and solid foundation of the decades to follow are placed to follow, and are placed in the political leaders, the archetypes of so-called cars of the people, or the coherent development of the different and original philosophies and approaches to how to ensure the spread of cars to the middle classes, and how to the new hopes of freedom and autonomy in transport for millions of families. It will be a decisive and revolutionary moment in the course of the evolution of the automotive spaces, due to the contrast of the old construction schemes that sees the chassis proceed along the assembly line, enriching itself more or less with elements that will direct it towards the various price classes, and the use of new coherent packages, in which the uniqueness of the product concept derives from the context of application to which it is dedicated. So the new design disciplines become solving problems and with ad hoc solutions, aimed at guaranteeing performance with the limited availability of economics and materials resources, detonating the true phenomenon of automotive design, seen with the right meaning that regards the combination of invention and wise optimization of the means to produce, and ready to start a new wave of conceiving the competition based on the originality of the solution. It's not coincidence that right in the interlude between the two world wars, three products concepts take shape in Europe which are widely open in redefining the next development of the entire world automotive sector, and take all the three moves from the idea of satisfying the needs and ambitions of the middle class, until then relegated to a role of observer of motor mobility, and for this more predisposed to accept what is radically dissimilar from the crystallized image of the motorist carriage, a true exclusive prerogative of the few wealthy able to get hold of it. To this end, three design cases, which took place in three different European countries, are emblematic, taking their moves from very different needs. The Volkswagen, the Beetle, has a dream of creating the robust and reliable functional archetype for all social classes, and conceived as an acceptable solution from different nation cultures. Its success in the USA in the 50s will be emblematic due to the combination of its rational use and value with its stylistic aspect and endowment. The Fiat 500A, the Topolino, for having focused directly on the economy of space, realizing the greatest innovation of this period in the conception of a minimum platform as regards the assembly of the chassis, engine, suspension, and the passenger compartment. And the Citroen TPV, the Deux Chevaux, a due cavalli, the most versatile design theme, conceived for the countryside and to ensure unparalleled operating cost and comfort until then, remaining competitive until the period of the oil crisis of the 70s. Not surprisingly, and due to the destination of these projects to a popular audience, all three products will be baptized with a nickname that will contribute not a little to their success on the market. And as will happen later for many other product sectors, a new method starts to define the identity of a product, which uses less technical terms, introducing metaphorical meanings for the time, and the recognizability and identification of children and women also increased. Are you okay with the presentation, or someone is?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, here.
Because I cannot see it.
To you. I know.
So briefly, the Topolino, this was the nickname. Remember, was never the name of the 500. This was the real first 500, the letter A. So the nickname, however, soon came into common use both among the public and among the professional. The combination of the 500 with the pet draws inspiration, both from the undeniable similarity, especially in the front and the side profile, between the car and the rodent, but above all, from the natural combination from the homonymous character designed by Walt Disney in the 27, there was characteristic round ears and immediately remembered by the round black lights observed by the driver and the passenger. In 1934, the engineer Fessia, then technical director of Fiat and coordinator of the project, entrusted a group of 29-year-old engineer Giacosa of the Avio motor section, so it was an aeronautical engineer, has the task of designing the chassis for a small, inexpensive car capable of being sold for 5,000 lire, according to the directives received from the management. As is known, the Giacosa Group has never designed a car. The condition of tradition is therefore minimal, and the direction immediately taken with the idea of a minimal chassis and a body that contributes to the rigidity of the wall shows all the wall design. The design frame consists of a pair of closed rectilinear spars limited to the part between the wheels without even reaching the rear axle. The habitability of the very small frame, the wheelbase is just 2 meters. It is guaranteed by the ingenious intuition of positioning the engine in the front, where the radiator is located, and set back from the engine itself, a solution contrary to the usual position of the engine between the front axle and the dashboard. So the engine in the front and the front suspension transversal over the front axle. Another element of innovation strongly promoted by Fessia himself is the compatibility of the project with the front-wheel drive, with a space completely free between the spindles of the wheels and the power takeoff in the gearbox, with the front transverse leaf spring suspension the car. The body line created by the Bodywork Technical Office under the direction of Rodolfo Schaeffer is strongly influenced by the aerodynamic studies of the time. Elusive muzzles, possible remember due to the rearward position of the radiator, lights were embedded in the mudguards. You see that these lights were integrated in the first prototype and then separated on the production car. In fact, the line is a couple with a tail that offers 2 comfortable seats plus a luggage compartment or space for 2 children on a makeshift rear bench. The small size unique in the automotive scenes of the time required 15 inches tires, a measure previously unearthed. Starting from the December 34, the 0A, so the 500 project, took on the name of Fiat 500. And the 36, the Fiat 500 was officially presented on the market. The final version shows some difference to the 0A project. The most obvious are the traditional external lights, which were not reproduced aerodynamically, and a choice dictated by the great ease of maintenance and adjustment. So it was not a cost reduction, but was a choice for maintaining the car and the easy-to-use way to approach the 500. After the production break of the 1944 and 1945, the success of the Type B of the same car is confirmed with over 21,000 units produced in the 2-year period 48 and 49. The new chassis and the new engine make it possible to offer 4-seater version of the 500 that was named B, and deeply felt needed that the 2-seater sedan cannot satisfy. The surplus of technologies and manpower in the production lines and the wooden framework now abandon the bodies is converted to the production of the Giardiniera, so the version with a steel body and the panels and door in ash and masonite in an elegant and captivating combination of metallic and natural wood color. So this was the first station wagon or estate car based on such a small package. And the Belvedere, so the Giardiniera, consists of versions and an extraordinary success with its ability to carry 4 people plus luggage and its versatility that make it, if necessary, by folding down the back of the rear bench, a commercial vehicle with a non-trivial load volume. And this dual personality characterized the urban and suburban road landscape of Italy reconstruction, well beyond the cessation of production that took place in January 1955. And moving also by date to the second car of the people, we will talk about the Volkswagen. And to deal with it was a study opened by the engineer Ferdinand Porsche, born in 1875, who after a few years of collaboration with the studies office of Mercedes and Auto Union, has decided to start with his own business, certainly choosing one of the darkest economy moments to do it, with unprecedented inflation. From the point of view of patents, he immediately got busy. For example, he had filed a new type of suspension in 1931 and above, although started the Project 12, the people's car. It was a long cherished purpose that of a car for everyone, but not of a scale copy reduced by the big sedans, but something totally different, with its own completely original characteristic. How this peculiarity should be, however, was not yet clear, and in fact, Porsche first to attempt to move from the design phase to the construction phase with a motorcycle company named Zundap, and the most important German motorcycle manufacturer. And then with NSU, the car factory, were unsuccessful. From the first words, the dictator Hitler's speech was a surprise for everyone. As long as the car remains the exclusive privilege of wealthy class, for all the other millions of good German workers, the feeling of being excluded from the possibility of using this means of transport will be bitter, which not only could be useful to them, but could means of transport and also a source of happiness and joy on holidays. The usual words of a politician looks for votes, many so, and they continue to think about it when Hitler promised to abolish the heavy traffic tax on new cars, guaranteed easier access to the driving license, described the network of new highways that we would have built. So the new mobility at the time was meant to be a system, taxes, taxation, roads, infrastructures, and so on. And he ended by promising a new car for all the German families could afford. It should have been a car costing no more than 990 marks, with a production volume of at least 50,000 units. In return, Porsche would have received 20,000 marks a month as a bill. Other sources speak of an initial figure of 20,000 marks that increased in 30,000, 40,000, then 50,000 for a total of more than 1 million of marks. If we consider the price of 1,000 brands marks equal to our current 5,000, the minimum for the purchase of a super subcompact, the figure received by Porsche could be around 5 million euros for the project. Porsche then oriented himself on a two-cylinder, two-stroke, air-cooled, almost motorcycle type. However, he's proved to be lacking in the power needed to push a car planned for 4 adults with relative luggage at a speed desired. And in conclusion, at the opening of the Berlin Motor Show in 1935, it became clear that the 10-month deadline would not be respected. On October 12, 1936, 2 sedans and convertible were delivered to the government, when by now the entire automotive industry had stopped being afraid that the project would come true. So they'd be very surprised, because Mercedes and Opel, they thought the car has never been produced and has convinced itself that will never be brought complete. The tests were done in 2 months, making the prototypes cover a total of 50,000 kilometers. It broke everything. It was to be expected that 3-hand assembled cars, but on the whole, something positive emerged. The dry relationship by the government showed little enthusiasm, but this was not what caused the deterioration of the relationship between the government and Mr. Porsche. It was having been put, one can say, against each other, and above all, the awareness on the industrialist that in the final analysis, the problem of containing the cost would have been them, because they had to build the pieces. For its part, Porsche was convinced that the weakness of the various mechanical parts was partly attributable also to the lack of car taken in the construction. So, long story short, at the Berlin Motor Show in February 1939, the Volkswagen made its official appearance, and success was immediate. To sell it, and above all, to finance construction and the slowly proceeding factory, the government invented a sort of forced saving. Citizens who wanted to order the new car had to buy saving cards on which to stick stamps from 5 marks a week until the cost of the car was reached. So you see that the marketing were not new at the period, and you have listened about how the car emerged in a system of infrastructures and a way to finance the car also for the most poor families. So the government office not only had to absolute prohibition of inductively ascertaining the income from owning the car, but they had to count of the running cost of the car to deduct it from taxable income. So a strategy to make the purchase of the car lighter, but for most of the customers unfinished. I would like to introduce also the third case of the car of the people in the 30s of the last century, and is the Citroen 2 chevaux, the 2 cavalli, the TPV, as it was called as a project. The first brainstorming said 4 wheels under an umbrella without breaking the eggs, because the eggs were the most fragile carry on a car of farmers, and so this was the manager concept and input. The origin dates back to the mid-30s with a character named Pierre-Jules Boulanger, who called to adjust the balance sheet of Citroën, who in 1934 has risked failure for the cost incurred for the revolutionary Traction Avant, the car that embodied the industrial dream of the founder André Citroën. You know that Traction Avant was the first front traction car, very expensive in terms of a project, and is very important in terms of innovation at the time. You know that the design of the Traction Avant was operated by Flaminio Bertoni, an Italian designer who came in France to work for Citroën since this very important project. Later, inspired by the total absence of vehicles in some agricultural regions of France, the manager dictated, I want 4 wheels under an umbrella capable of carrying a couple of farmers, 50 kilograms of potatoes, and a basket of eggs across a plowed fields without breaking an egg. And that was the task. André Lefebvre, who was given the task of drawing the lines of the car that was to replace the pair of horses that each farmer used to transport his things, conceived the TPV in 1939, Très Petit Voiture, very small car, of which Boulanger had 250 prototypes built. The 1939 TPV was still very rough, but but had the front windows divided horizontally, the upper half which remained fixed with the lower that's tilted upwards, allowing the arm to be extended outward. And in the 1940, the Nazi troops crossed the border with France. On the same day, Boulanger gave the order to destroy all the prototypes of the TPV so that they not fall into the hands of the enemies. It will only be discovered in the 80s that 3 prototypes are fortunately survived, hidden under a thatched roof on a building of the Citroen test center. So in 45, Boulanger decided to give the future Deux Chevaux a more delicate appearance and called the Italian designer Flaminio Bertoni, entrusting him with the task of making the appearance of the TPV more pleasant. But the designer goes even further. He gives the Deux Chevaux that sympathy that from that moment on will characterize its appearance. So the 1948 Deux Chevaux cost little more than a pair of horses, but infinitely less than any other car. The suspension is brilliant, but by the 1948 standards, the appearance is still too modern. Only shortly thereafter did the success become so great that the manufacturer was the first to be surprised, that it was unable to satisfy all requests. A circular is immediately issued for dealers who must accept order only from those who demonstrate they cannot afford a normal car. That is really interesting. So the Deux Chevaux was offered only on a restricted batch of customers who cannot afford a normal car, so a more expensive car. Therefore, farmers, veterinarians, teachers, people who have to move, but who do not have the means to buy a traction avant, not even the cheapest one. So the current industrial production of the Deux Chevaux, however, began in September 1949, and the first model, the A-Type, with a 375cc engine, was assembled until November 1960 in 128 units. The Deux Chevaux, its many versions and derivatives, has also been assembled in Belgium, England, Portugal, Chile, Iran, Ivory Coast, Argentina, Vietnam. Commercial vehicles such as the van derived, the Citroen Diane, the Mehari, and the Acadian constitute such a large of various families of vehicles produced until July 1990 for the needs of mid-planet motorists, from the Africa to the Americas, from the Middle East to Indochina, built on the basis of the single project of absolute genius. Now I take a breath, because in the central part of the presentation, I would like to make you distracted a little bit on form and usability, because we assisted on 3 cases of car made for the local purpose, by government organization or by big company in terms of satisfy the needs, the basic needs of their population. But this important moment was born in the 50s more than in the 30s, where the architects expressed their vision on cars with not professional approaches sometimes, but very intuitive and dramatically innovative approaches. And recently, a careful observation I did on the Gio Ponti and Alberto Rosselli 1952 design project of the Diamante. You know, Diamante was a line of products from the bathroom sink to the cutleries for house, and then a car project. And this project has recently involved me to extend and inducing me to identify with the intent of its creators to make a car full of ideas and innovative solutions, but still addressed to the industrial production and the typical evolution of the mid-sized vehicles. The 1950s were the right years to bring new product strategy into fruition and to define a new modern lifestyle far removed from the atrocity of the World War, supported by a bold optimism in the future. The Americans had already started distancing themselves from the torpedo shapes and from the separation between body and fenders. But in the 50s, their car became much larger and heavier than the previous decades. You know, the 50s were the explosion of the car styling and the themes on the cars and very inflated surfaces. While Citroen was preparing the launch of the DS in France, changing once again the concept of an already very innovative model of the Traction Avant into a total revolution as the 1955 DS did, Joe Ponti, the great architect, observed with references to the car bodies, and these are his words: the strong incongruity of bulges and unnecessary bulk with absurd internal voids. So he said we have empty space to cover by metal, not used. And he traced with great ease the lines of a slender volume made of diedrals decomposing the various parts and intersection of volumes into one into another. I believe that the daring break with the traditional expressed by the Diamante concentrated on the slender side panel section with less inclined glazing than usual, that allowed the designer to imagine a very low waistline, the belt line, resizing the proportion of the windows from horizontal to vertical. He also eliminated the so-called shoulder, so the waistline, that on many cars of the day emerged at the base of the side window to convey strength and an appropriate impression of side impact protection. In doing so, Ponti conferred an unusual graphic value to the lines of the doors and overhanging parts. The observer side chases the division drawn on the nearly flat surfaces of the composition lines, like the picture of Mondrian, the tableau, to appreciate its proportion rather than being guided by the lights that lie on the volumes. You see that we designers, we observe cars, moving a light on the surface to see if full surface are smooth. But also the cars that he calls bulging, so very, very fat, but which will continue to dictate that law of the market for the obvious advantages linked to the sensuality of the forms. And even the bonnet, so the hood of the Diamante, takes a steep angle to benefit of visibility from the driver's seat. Through a spine along the middle line, the two sides slopes downwards towards the ground. And even more importantly, the entire hood is carved on the bodywork by a perimeter line having a horizontal development, which carries a small portion of the fender with it, thus becoming one of the first clamshell hood in the history. 20 years ahead of the Fiat 127 or the Saab 99. You see my sketching on the back, on the lower side of this page is a comparison of the Joe Ponti Diamante on top and the Saab 99 below. We rebuilt the car with a computer styling, and then we milled a full-scale model. So to appreciate what Joe Ponti has never seen in reality, because the Joe Ponti project was not accepted by any company at the time, and so he made only a little cardboard model. The body envisaged with shape and the compositions as this is therefore a major and drastic break with respect to the standard of the industry. And although hatchbacks had already made a fleeting appearance at the end of the 30s, that was all ever a Traction Avant with a special feature of the rear lift gate, we will have to wait until the mid-60s to see a similar solution on the market of the popular models. After this deep identification that experienced the reconstructed Ponti and Rosselli project granted me, thinking about the history and the ferment of the 50s, I wanted to bring together, in my personal vision of automotive history, some significant steps of development in terms of forms, function, and usability, which appear most inspired by a thinking directed to architectures and studies on living environments, although in movement. So the body envisaged with shape at the composition as this is therefore a major and drastic break with respect of the standard of the industry. And although hatchbacks had already made a fleeting appearance in the 30s, with the Traction Avant, we will have to wait until the mid-60s to see a similar solution. The watershed between pure experimentation and production is the pairing between concept and standard product. That is the selection that I will be presenting, many being seen as rather unlikely by some, And I will take responsibility for this, because for the questionable kinship between the vehicles I selected, and because of what I personally consider to be the heritage of enlightened thinking handed down directly to mass production cars. And I would like to start with what is considered to be the purest form, the excellence of performance and aerodynamic terms. For example, the drop shape. Many engineers and coach builders dabble with the tapered shape of a drop water to make enveloping bodies, such as the 1914 Alfa Romeo 4060 HP Aerodynamica, in which, for reason of sheer performance, the mechanics were encased to propel the car beyond the previous peak ratings. Instead, it will be an architect, of rather a visionary, called Buckminster Fuller, to devise a real car based on an aircraft fuselage, and to pick up the heritage of the Alfa 4060, but in a perspective that of a one-box cabin half occupied, or better, invaded by the mechanics and the engine. And this is the Dymaxion. Dymaxion was designed by Buckminster Fuller, and the Dymaxion shaped a plausible idea of package reconfiguration, namely the organization of the available volume with the seats and the position of the mechanics aimed to extending the space of action for the passengers. To make the project less attractive for production and sales was the rational ratio between exterior dimension and passenger compartment usability, still lacking the sense of full exploitation of the available volume to generate the highest number of seats aboard with respect to the footprint. So a very good design, but not properly efficient. Who was the one to took all this heritage from the pure water drop of the Alfa Romeo 4060 and the Dymaxion? Still Dante Giacosa with the 600 multipla. In terms of practical heritage, deriving from the imaginary product of the drop shape in car design, in the 56 Fiat 600 multipla, which almost unwittingly, through a brilliant work of reconfiguration of the constituent parts of the normal 600 saloon, created a real multi-purpose vehicle, inside and outside, able to accommodate six passengers in just a little more than 3.5 meters, and achieving a very high degree of reconfigurability of its passenger compartment. The exterior shape is the result of a creative process that only started from a drop shape and which would ultimately not find widespread application in real production, due to the obvious difficulty of putting the theory of the perfect air penetrating body into practice, if not through excessive elongation of the tail that tapers in a single point. In any case, the 600 multipla, although remotely comparable with the Buckminster Fuller Dymaxion ambitious project, became the first mass-produced rocket car in the history, perfectly performing the task of dual-purpose car, and showing off its futuristic aircraft fuselage shape in a perfect blend of iconicity and usability of the solution for its day. It's not for free that the Victoria and Albert Museum in London this year has asked to my museum a 600 multipla. We expected for a very important car design exhibition. They asked the 600 multipla as the most eloquent shape of the innovation in car design in the last century. Are you there?
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah,
here we are.
okay, I go ahead. So
Yeah,
don't worry.
absolutely.
Few charts again.
We are quite stregati. We are
stregati, so confused. So Le Corbusier, Jean Généré, a very famous architect, he designed minimum vehicle, so an exercise, or better, an idealization of the car of the people in terms of rational approach and concept based on the human figure and the human movement. When discussing automotive design with an architect, the theme of minimalism, or rather how to make a vehicle with fewest number of components as possible, is often bounced about. we are very aware of how complex the topic of simplification is in the quest for less waste in making projects without detriment to the final quality aspects. For cars, the stakes are still being raised, whichever increasing in complexity, due to the need to tackle the requirement of making products which are increasingly safer and compatible with continuously adapted type approval standards. This is the story of today. Despite this, the exercise of thinking of a cost-effective car, which is easy to assemble, is always beneficial and worthy of being repeated, precisely in order to encourage the production of ideas and concepts useful for developing production processes and seeking new assembly functionalities. This is why I want to turn to the design of the Voiture Minimum and the Citroen 2 Chevaux for their reference to the typical approach of the world of architecture and product design, and their versatility to allow us to trace back from their usability to the principle applied to their designers in creating them. This is another offspring of architecture, one that is also recognized by the general public as a result of aesthetic impact of the volume of the Citroen 2 Chevaux with respect with the Voiture Minimum designed by Le Corbusier in 1936. So the two cars have never been in relation. But my point is how to compare the invention of Le Corbusier on creating this canopy. This shape has a revolution of a radius, and the solution applied by Citroen a few years in advance with the TPV. The approach of the Swiss architecture was first and foremost to retrieve the right angle intersection between sides and floor. That is not banal, guys, because when you look at the floor of the cars, we are not looking at the floor of our houses or spaces where them open space, lofts, or farmhouse. I mean, we are moving on to horizontal space. In cars, we have very complex floors. So at first, Le Corbusier studied the intersection between doors and floors, and that is the most radical approach from an architect point of view. Once again, the comparison between the two side views of the Voiture Minimum and the Citroen 2 Chevaux highlights the efficient exploitation of the volume and rewards the solution of the small Citroen in managing to arrange 4 seats in the cabin, excluding the engine from the benefit of staying under the hood. You need this. This is not a luggage. This is the engine in the Le Corbusier Minimum. Instead, the Citroen 2 Chevaux has the engine bay outside the greenhouse. And then I move directly to what I call the efficient approach. Turning back to the initial theme, we may now describe the architect's approach to the car design as the search for the minimal essential condition to describe a passenger compartment as architecture in motion. What allows a body package to comply with the basic requirements of a very concept of living space, albeit in motion, which is the rule, who knows?
So guys,
the design of a new car is always, keep in mind forever, the result of a complex work that sees the involvement of many different skills, research and development, design in terms of study also of the anthropological and the usability in terms of trial and error test on maquettes and computer styling, every kind of situation of experimentation, and what we call today the whole market, the brand, the market, the weak signals, everything is conditioning the vision and the expectation for the future. Most traditional manual manufacturing again focused the progressive refinement of every element and detailing the figure of designers, touch in which the integration of different contributions is also the most traditional manual manufacturing again focus the progressive refinement of every element and detail in the figure of the designer. And you see a family tree is not a catalog of cars, is a listing I did with the Topolino, with her sister, the Topolino station wagon called the Belvedere, as I told you, the 600 Multipla, that was the the monovolume of the 600, look at the innovation between the first row, upper row, and the second, because the relative car of this was the 600 that had the engine integrated in the tail here. And then we have the 500 of 1957, always from Mr. Giacosa, and the relative station wagon that was the Giardiniera. The 127, the car designed by the son of the sculptor Giacomo Manzù, Pio Manzù, and the Fiat Uno, that was so-called the monovolume inside, designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro in the last 70s. In the history of the Fiat brand, for instance, there are some precise moments that can be traced in which the contribution of some designers translated into the creation of models with revolutionary characteristics. And I also like to resume as a contemporary family the role that had these cars nicknamed as a grandparent and grandmother, and the daddy and the mom with the 2007, 2010 Panda and 500, and what we can consider the family with the product like the 500L as the contemporary monovolume in the range of products of the Fiat catalog. Fiat is also famous as an evolution of concept, and has never been obsessed by the family feeling, all this kind of application of the styling more than design in terms of recognition of the brand by a distance. Fiat has ever been involved into experimentative platforms. I like to compare the Fiat 8V on the left. So the first and the only one V8 engine in the history of Fiat, and the little sedan 600 on the right, that was the ancestor car also for the 500 of the 50s, and was really a breakthrough in the industry park at the time. This car belongs to the same reputation of Fiat, to experiment. And some thoughts that came into mind here are also the cornerstone of the design of the living environments. Also, very, very important features are the ingress and egress condition. Why designers are not working so much on this kind of operation of how to get in a car and how to get out from a car. And the creation of a flat, steepless floor plan, which does not require climbing over obstacles when moving about and inside. So it's important, guys, because also this operation are the so-called gray areas, are the most fundamental path of research for industrial designers, more than engineers. That are, the tendency for the engineering department is to apply, the knowledge about apply something that has been experimented, and they plan the innovation. But car designers can make the difference in terms of try to interpret it differently. What we call the gesture, the habits in the car. Also, Achille Castiglione said, it's not design what doesn't change habits and movements and gestures. So it's very important to look at this, and also see that cars, on the other hand, that continue to represent an irreplaceable instrument for individual and collective mobility, an expression of behavior and even contradiction. And during the years in which I headed the first Advanced Design Center in the Fiat Group from 2002 to 2006, I happened to meet many personalities from the world of furniture design and architecture, sometimes working on real automotive meta projects with them. Isao So, Mario Bellini, Richard Sapper, Michele De Lucchi. I spent days, months to design with them possible meta project of cars that influences so much my imagination. They left me deeply convinced about the future of cars, for example, in the direction of improved usability and livability. Also with regards to the recent development of the onboard infotainment systems, which is leading users to perform operations which require a considerable cognitive load and generating the need to cleanse the driving experience from many disruptions arising from the movement of the car itself. With regard to some of the topics described before, already in the 1990s, I was working on a micro-electric car, the Fiat Downtown, presented in Geneva in 1993, to develop the layout concept itself, and that I decided for a 3-seater solution. With driving seat in the middle, given the minimal size of the car, it not seems sensible to decentralize the driver on a side, with obvious savings in avoiding the need to make a left-hand drive or a right-hand drive for different countries. And the idea was right to prevent any of the 3 occupants of the small cabin sitting looking at a headrest. I'm car sick since my childhood, so I cannot imagine to stay in a little cabin behind, with my face directly behind an headrest. On the same project, I found myself solving, I believe brilliantly, the problem of getting driver in and out of the car easily by devising a solution which provided incorporating a portion of the floor, which in this case was totally flat, allowing the driver to put a foot on the ground before having even budget from the driving seat with the hand, still on the steering wheel. In practice, the standing entry concept I had thought a few years before, for example, a way to get in and out from a car with no unnecessary contortions, was coming into fruition on a real car. The theme was also a very current one, given the aging of the population and the average age of whom has the purchasing power to buy cars. Don't forget, we, as young people, we are designing cars for young because this makes us more happy, more positive. But on the other hand, you know that the power of purchase is on the hands of aged people. There's also a scenario that is called elderly people in terms of users in the gray area of the age that are normally banned to use some of the contemporary products. Even some SUVs and sedans are banned to the use of people of 75, 80 years old. And in short, the teaching of the interior designers and architects whom I met and with whom I was able to ponder from the beginning of my career in the automotive world, from Bonetto to the design experience of Isao Soe, Richard Sapper, De Lucchi, Jean Nouvel, as I said, generated me attitude to configure particularly livable passenger compartments, with a particular eye to optimizing general usability values, also in the so-called gray transitional areas, such as that of facilitated ingress or egress, easy interaction among the passengers, external visibility from every seat, and the reduction of onboard barriers. The car is based on a bent steel section space frame completely assembled on reference jigs for both platforms and for body structures. This was the briefing of the Fiat Multipla, a car we started designing in 1992, and after 2 years of experimentation, we got this space frame body shell that was incredibly efficient in terms of flexibility and reducing the cost of investments. And I made this basically as a tableau or a chart for inspiration and for briefing the management. So a designer that briefed the managers of the company on how to get the first minivan of the C segment in their catalog in such a innovative atmosphere, because basically the competition was at zero. So there were no C segment minivans around in Europe. With this, I'm not saying that a project such as the 98 Fiat Multipla can be regarded as a perfect combination between technological innovation and architecture, but the study of the Fiat C segment minivan put into practice a coherent set of aspects linked to the roof volume to allow 3 passengers sitting on the same row to move and relate. Relate, because move, we know in a car we can move to talk with the guy at the wheel from the rear seat, or we can move to turn our head, but really we cannot have a pleasant relation with the passengers because they are not conveyed, not designed to communicate, to have integration in the cockpit. After being gained access without effort or contortion and without obstacles, to be overcome with their feet at the rails. Rails are the structure in the floor chassis. Since its launch, the Multipla Fiat changed the traditional structure of the multipurpose vehicles with pairs of seats arranged on 3 rows by fitting 6 individual and identical seats arranged only on 2 rows. Furthermore, it is also the only car in its segment to offer 6 seats and a large luggage compartment, 430 liters, which can be maximized to 1,300 with the rear seat folded in just 4 meters of length. The floor is free from obstacles, and instead of presenting the typical step beneath the rear seat and on the side members for existing, the floor is flat and high enough to be able to accommodate the component of the low environment impact versions that they keep the natural gas version underneath. So also the gap on the bottom face of the floor is used to accommodate the fuel tank, the gas tank for the CNG version. I think perhaps this project in which I was involved in designing the concept and the final style was the closest to the teachings of the world of architecture transferred to the automotive sector that I have the privilege of absorbing and reprocessing, starting from Gioponti's insights expressed in the Diamante, with the slimming of the sides as to not subtract from the interior space, to the theories of Isao Soe and Michele De Lucchi, with whom we discussed at length on the qualities of a car floor, starting from its planarity and the need to not oppose obstacles for the foot when getting out, etc. And now the final part of the presentation is I had the privilege for this talk to assemble some charts about the new crowning glory that is not selling only cars, but selling mobility. Today, the car world is experiencing a sudden change due to the change of habits that digital networks are bringing about in people, introducing new aspects linked to the concept of workstation or shopping, for instance. Even visiting a destination today requires almost instantaneously, this is difficult, instantaneously, that route which is established in the real time as a function of many aspects such as traffic condition, the weather, or the availability of our interlocutors in a network which exchanges data non-stop from satellites into space to the mobile phone in our pockets. Getting to a car nowadays very often does not mean beginning to govern a demanding vehicle which requires attention and particular skills, but on the contrary, being able to enjoy its technological performance in order to bolster, for example, features or services that before accessing it were relegated to a single portable device. Similarly, the changes in the concept of comfort itself that a vehicle expressed in the past only through the comfort of its seats or efficient climate control and soundproofing, today offers contents which more closely resemble the interface relationship we find in software on our computers, far cry from the luxury lounge effect that was the recurring trend applied all cars striving to aspire to a higher degree of desirability than their more austere competitors. Sooner or later, we will be able to configure many of our favorite conditions simply by passing in front of detectors from one environment to another. Our cars will also respond to this trend, preparing themselves in our preferred manner and being able to respond to our momentary mood, not just in terms of absolute spaces. This is a citation from Jeremy Rifting, from Possess to Access era. And you see from a big SUV to a flat, smooth people mover. Very soon we will be able to choose a car accordingly to our taste and preferences, starting from the color of its paintwork. Can anyone who enters a car blindfolded see the paint color from the inside? Tell me. To the advantage of seeing the vehicle on which we are traveling transformed according to our temporary mood, particularly in its soft contents and as well as its hard components. This will be the great revolution of the car design over the next few years. This is quite complicated map, but you can see that on the left you have the status quo. So what we consider today the three pillars for the conceptualization of the new design product as a car. You say safety, you say comfort, you say style, and then you see the transformation in this very moment where new mobility is taking place in terms of possession, where safety becomes easiness, and comfort becomes well-being, and style becomes mood. And you see in a little written scripts, you see some of the brainstorming results in terms of what they could be the application of this concept into a plausible car product. It will be in the switch from ownership to use that many of the new values of the driving experience and of the journey itself will change profoundly, putting into the practice what the new technological frontiers of miniaturization and of digital control of matter will be able to express the car product. And then let's make the world around trip. On the other hand, on our road network, the proliferation of the commercial and service activities scattered over the territory of large cities will ensure that the vehicles turn into the highlighters and seekers of interest of users. Finding the shortest way to transfer from A to B, literally surfing on a traffic congestion by choosing the most fluid routes, even the magnification of semi-hidden entities of advertisements of private citizens will be able to create the multitude of information which, instead of appearing on the screen of your smartphone, will be displayed on the head-up displays of the vehicles. Of course, with the option to disable them at your request. The vehicles themselves, when not in motion, will be able to act as comfortable benches with the opportunities to enjoy advanced multimedia content for promotional purposes, which will be justified economic exchange for having rested for a moment without paying. All this could concern, with a greater probability, the continents of Europe and Asia, which currently sees the highest concentration of commercial and service realities within the sphere of large urban centers. The tendency towards pedestrianization of the centers of the large cities, of rather the coexistence of car with other forms of individual transports, bicycles, scooters, for example, will entail the presence of an apparatus of sensors capable of balancing the speed of vehicle maneuvers in order to avoid the most dangerous consequences. In a system that sees vehicles as part of the shared use system, or in any case temporarily owned, where there's still no optimized road network for the use of cars with the high content of the electronic devices, it will be a question of providing the most high ability to restore them. We have already observed that the economic margins of car-sharing companies are, in our day, penalized by vehicles repair costs, which often exceed the net revenues. The future of car-sharing in the countries of South America, in an hypothesis of sustainable development of the entire production chain and in the management of the service, will be able to see the application of new renewal operation, functional and aesthetic of vehicles, making the most of the use of plant-based plastic material capable of eliminating the ecological impact of disposal with total reuse of the materials. You see, this is mostly dedicated to the South American continent. and Africa and South Asia, what has made up the long journey of the evolution of cars in the European continent and the USA in the last century will not necessarily have to be repeated as a series of obligatory steps for the construction and dissemination of cutting-edge vehicles. The possibility that exists of being able to develop at the same pace the road network and the vehicles that run through it constitutes a great opportunity for harmonized development of the world ecosystem of the new mobility. Whether there are journeys of long distances and movements in the cities, the new starting point will be the network of dialogue between vehicles and the computerization of infrastructures, with the most appropriate system, country by country. And the vehicle will soon be able to communicate more closely with each other, releasing a large part of the cognitive load which is now weighs on the driver, who will finally be able to enjoy the ride more or do something else. It is obviously a question of managing the compromise of being inside a moving vehicle, therefore not completely suitable for all types of activities. It will be difficult to practice yoga, gymnastics inside a self-driving car, for example, but there will be an innumerable ideas to create real interesting experience in the car, I grant you. Moving from a standard transport position to a personalized arrangement, we will try to imagine how the movement of a car will be affected by what it is the activity and operation inside, rather than adapting our service to the condition of travels and availability, which is today's situation of uncomfortable and oppressive seat belts and the presence of explosives on board to detonate the airbags. And the absolute fact of looking everyone in the same direction without being able to look at each other. So this kind of freedom to imagine new cockpits, as very often is visible on the new designer's portfolio, will be only based on the revolution. So the car will adapt their movement to the activity inside, not the reverse. See, with these premises or expectation, the journey can become a much more satisfying experience than the one known so far, leaving aside for a moment what we consider the pure pleasure of driving, which we know can be resolved through the occasional use of historical cars, which would be replaced or better implemented by a different form of control, more oriented towards well-being in general, to the maintenance of physical fitness and to the use of content still unexplored in the augmented reality sector. The passage itself from what we consider the city 2.0 to a truly connected and interactive environment will cause the decrease of proliferation of signs and barriers, improving the urban aspects and the recovery of the historical heritage, and guaranteeing safety and freedom of movement for the people. We are quite there.
Yeah, we are here.
Now I finished. So in what I really imagine, not definitely in the cities 3.0, there will be a progressive development of infrastructures. This is my update. Dedicated to the vehicles equipped with autonomous driving, which will begin their practical experimentation without involving risk for anyone. Only in this way we will be able to start living and managing a new approach to individual mobility in private transport and to convince administration to invest in the network. And with this chart, I ended my basically one century presentation, because I started with the idea to start from these masterpieces of the 30s in terms of cars designed for the people and designed for the large mass, and moving from the architect's intuition and then moving to the efficiency of cars to imagine the future.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. I have a lot of questions to ask you. The first one is Matteo Conti from Northumbria University.
Ciao, Matteo. How are you doing?
Hi, Matteo. Your question was, Roberto, do you believe architects should be more involved in concept ideation of vehicles, considering the changing world we live in? Any connection with the rise of vertical cities and mobility in an evolving urban environment?
I think a parallel discussion, a parallel exchange of vision is absolutely of primary importance. I have to thank my boss at the time, Architetto Ermanno Cressoni, was a very open mind car designer from Alfa Romeo to the large Fiat group as a design head to encourage to have a dialogue with people that we knew since the beginning were not at the same level of interpretation of the qualities of a real, in the true sense of the car design development, but were absolutely crucial to for a sharing of observation of the future and the new trends, instead to catalog absolutely useless trends as what we are mentioning emotions probably in an exasperated way today, and we have no way to the minimal sense to how to reproduce real emotion on cars about driving them. And I had really great moments with Isao Soe, Jean Nouvel, Michele De Lucchi, to envisage this opportunity to at least to flatten the floor, to have easy access to change the position of the seats. And we also made some interesting manufacts as prototypes and maquettes to influence our opinion, our observation field. And today, I think it's very important if we see that the involvement of what we call the futuristic architectures in terms of urban study of evolution of the large cities, okay, it will be important to associate also new cars to infrastructures. Now we are moving in cities as Milan or Florence with big SUVs, but with large tires. But I think more and more a more dedicated specs of type of cars dedicated to the different environments. And why this? Because with the user, not possess, we can interchange cars from any task for any kind of use. So in the cities, if we want to flatten the walk size to the center lane where the cars are moving, it will be possible because this will be a matter of digital infrastructure to protect the pedestrians, for instance. And we could have also a ground level for the floor so close to the tarmac or to the new material for surfacing the roads to make accessibility easier than ever, more easier than ever, because cars are more specialized for cities. And then SUVs will be the choice to get out of town, to have the weekend, to have the vacancy, the holidays with the family. I mean, accessibility means exactly this, and we are assisting today how we can also from our brand to associate to the use of cars for very different brands in one formula, one commercial formula.
Thank you. We have also a question of Diogo Silva. Roberto, where do you find inspiration for such innovative and creative design, and how do you see the future of mobility?
Inspiration came. I was obsessed to become a car designer after my poor furniture design experience when I was 25. I mean, so learning from the masters here in Torino, not only my colleagues, but also the possibility to visit as consultants, as vendors, Giugiaro, Pininfarina, Bertone. There was Lucio Bertone presenting his model at the time in our company. So it has been a great opportunity to see the peculiarities of this job and having also the possibility with the advanced design founded in 2001 to institute a studio with basically only students, and the possibility to have gurus as Alessandro Mendini or Isao Soe as participants to our elucubration and perspective. I mean, this was a great opportunity to enlarge my inspiration, to clear all the prejudice, and also to try to fix everything in terms of making everything working, possibly working. And this is a skill that probably I have also in my way to sketch, to communicate with sketches. I'm more the guy that's want to intrigate and catch the attention of other people, creating stories in my sketches instead of creating the ultimate rendering. Because, you know, sometimes it's always difficult also to remain attached to the original rendering, and the car is not the same as the drawing. This is the endless story in some of the evolution of the car design inside the company.
Absolutely.
It's not the same. Please try again. But I know I'm very evolutionary in this. I like to tell a story to catch the attention of the management. And this was the story with the Multiply, and also for the 500. The support from the management at the time was to be catch them in terms of proposition of the car instead of the only aesthetics, more in the value of the communication. And in the same way, I can look at the future. I mean, only walking on the street and seeing the problems, sometimes running from a train to an aircraft. I mean, we are living the mobility problems basically in the intersections. And if we want to, as designers, we want to create great opportunities for the company and for the economy in the future, is try to see the interconnection between one word and another. Sometimes they don't talk sufficiently, and sometimes also transportation courses are not approaching really these gray zones that are existing. I'm still dreaming for a lift gate on the back of my Alfa Romeo Stelvio that is not occupying space externally. So I like things that are opening without demanding space for extra volume to open. I mean, I like sliding doors apart from the sound they do. My first car had parallelogram opening, so had hinges parallel to the body to limit the excursion of the door. I mean, all these things are in the mind of, I think, of any car designer. If the approach is to improve the life, if the approach is to create a restyling of the existing, I mean, we can work infinitely for infinite with the same paradigm, no problem. I mean, it's a matter of probably application or generosity sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Changing of mind also, because sometimes we are like in a box we don't see after.
Exactly. Right.
So Sergio Chierici, buongiorno Sergio, a question: how the iconic cars of the past could help to design efficient, spacious and innovative new cars with electric motors, modern technologies and connectivity?
At first, I will say icon, you become an icon, you don't born an icon. So when we call the icons car that's got always this reputation, we see that has been the reputation has been built up with the use, and so I think I'm between 258 icons here in the FCA Heritage Hub.
Yes.
We're surrounded by cars that's changed the story in some different moments for little things or big things. We have the Lancia Lambda that is the first, is over there. That was the first body shell integrated with the chassis. I mean, with no lambda, we had still today rails and the coaches bolt on the chassis. To respond is to me, it's the matter is try to absorb from the icons, what the so-called icons, the space for the next jump. I mean, the encourage is to see how long Lancia got the innovation of the six-cylinder V shape to reduce the overhang of the bonnet. It was 15 years from the Aurelia, from the previous model. And so this is important because we can absorb from the icon the time for innovation, the ingredients, and what made the difference. Now we are obsessed by the presence of a certain powerful design in our creations, normally due to the length of the bonnet, and we are again in the situation where in the 20s of the last century, designers, engineers were pointing because the engine was so long in the front of the car that we had no alternative. And the Lancia with Pininfarina, when they designed the Aurelia B20, one of the most beautiful, the B20 most beautiful coupe ever, they differentiate from the English tradition of the long bonnet. So they created quite a cab forward, a car that was, you know, the greenhouse was pushing on the front, were absolutely controcorrente, so totally opposite to the trend. So for this reason, we should try to work steady on innovation in the way that we can calibrate and create a dosage for the acceptance of innovation. And it's important to create plausible effects for our work, not fantastic or exaggerated. Mm-hmm. If we had launched the Fiat Multipla today, for sure we had more success than in 1998, because now things more clear in terms also of practical use of a car, or the reason why a car has a different shape. At the time, we were neglected to don't have care so much for the design, but apart from soft and sharp surfaces or radiuses, the importance is to create the acceptance of an innovation and try to feed this to the open and the large user in the most plausible way.
Hi Roberto, I'm a student in RCA Intelligent Mobility. Thank you for your nice presentation. Today we are living in a period of transition and the same for the car. So I have quite a few questions. How does our crisis COVID have an impact on today mobility, automotive thinking, market design, and also for the future? And the second one is what do you think the future of the car will be, let's say 2030, 2045? Do you believe in the fully autonomous car? Thank you very much for the response.
Thank you for the question, because it's really interesting, also difficult to answer completely, but yeah, I think you know, the emergency for the current epidemic, and it's such a dramatic test of what could be seen as probably a weak signal for the people is working, making intercontinental journeys. The idea to create a distance from the person beside you, the guy beside you, has been slightly approached in the past before COVID, because we recognize a certain urgency or emergency to have private space. Some business classes in the planes are offering foldable walls or flowers around you to simulate your personal space, your intimacy, your preservation. And today this is coming to be dramatically urgent. And when I pointed at the personal mobility devices is not only things on four wheels. We will wear something for mobility in the future. Mm-hmm. Also, a very visionary project at RCA in 2003 was offering also things to wear in terms of fitting a Fiat mobility. At the time, the project was sponsored by Fiat, in the way to be prepared for a personalized journey in a car, having on your body something that's influenced the cockpit. So when I see very small cars as shower boxes on four wheels, I'm a little bit scared, because we will face public transport in a way that the preservation of our safety, our health, will be based on something that we will carry in a lighter way, in a more practical way, with acting immediately. And these are also the same basic roots of car design, of car engineering, if probably better, lightness, personalization. So who of the design students is crazy for making things lighter in terms of weight, physical weight? Very few ones. I mean, we are adding scripts. This is the engine. This is the now the Windows opening is based. If Gioponti were alive, he would be offended to see cars that, to make the glass descending, they have to increase the volume outside with an empty space that is not absolutely requested. So to don't go too far from the question, I would say the identity for places will be based on two pillars: making things lighter, the wearable, and especially the vehicles will be optimized for an autonomy first, not for the drive, but for the economy.
Yeah.
Because they are not our own.
Yeah.
They will not break down because they will be not our own. And because they are public, they will not break down. If they are public or shared, they will absolutely be lighter, because there's no transaction from a producer to a single.
Yeah.
They remain in the producer investment. And this is very important to understand, because the car design will be physically on the body or very close to the body. When I met Mr. Sabelt here in Torino, and he is a leader as a company for racing, for ergonomic seats, I say probably in your product, I say to him, there's the 80% of the new mobility content, because the seat and basically all the things you will carry in your long or quick experience of journey will be very close to the body. And on the other hand, self-driven, totally autonomous driving, it's a research that for sure will get to a functional and fully safe result. But we have to consider today how self-driven cars will relate to the specs of the needs of the occupants. So if you imagine a car that is moving in Torino here at the same speed I reached my workplace this morning, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, because it's a confusion. We will see autonomous vehicles moving in dedicated lanes with very specific customers of this experience of transportation that would be more interested on use the time for the transfers instead to experience a new kind of car. Because it's the time, the precious factor of the new mobility and the health. after COVID, of course.
And we see now, probably, because now we don't have the time used for mobility, no? Because we are at home, and now we are really understanding how it's precious this time we spend moving all around.
Exactly. So we are experiencing this. We are in need to have a high fidelity. I'm a fanatic for music. I mean, but we will point in the future also for services in after COVID, after process and approaching the access era. We will expect to find more fidelity in what our senses, our body is prone to give, to receive. And listening music in the 30s was a needle on a poor vinyl surface. Today we have clouds of music and 5 channels. Why don't have 5-channel experience in terms of transportation? That is really a service that we cannot experience. I'm fanatic for driving classic cars. I will not get far from my Alphas, my Jeeps, my classic cars. But I mean, in the future, we'll approach a different kind of experience, and we can call them emotion for sure. Not the same emotions we are experiencing today with Alfa Romeo or with a off-road vehicle, no?
Yeah. It's a different type of emotion and less connected to the motion. Is an emotion.
Absolutely, but please, before create the title, write a book.
Yeah.
This is my suggestion to designers. Before creating the title of your mega render, write a book. Also little scraps, but day by day they will be a great book.
Yeah. So Giorgio Gugulakis, one of our ex-students, asked in Italian, but I translate in English for the stranger, for the other. During these last 20 years, we saw prototypes very beautiful of Fiat and Alfa Romeo, but unlikely the majority of these are not going in production. Why this creation remains only prototypes and we don't see on the streets?
Well, I worked with Sergio Marchionni for basically for 20 years, non-stop, and I mean. He was not a fanatic for creating the concept car to anticipate something we had in progress. Here, I'm close to some of the concept car I worked on. The Fiat Downtown was my first project. I mean, it's been unexpressed. It has been created a very expensive prototype. We spent a fortune to make 2 cars, running cars, working cars actually, with the electric engines in the wheels, but we never produced that. And also the 500 was presented in Geneva as a show car, and we never had the intention and to produce this car. I mean, the 500 was more a language concept, a language innovation concept. The Downtown was a car fulfilled of innovation aspects in terms of architectures. Recently, the Alfa Romeo 4C became a real product. I mean, I remember the concept we did also when I was head of design for the FCA EMEA region. So also the Maserati Alfieri is still on the process. I mean, we like to share with the public some ideas, and but as you have seen, we have not promised something that has never happened, but differently. If we presented some concept only for aesthetics, this has been changed in something different because on the time we changed the idea, and that is the human. On the other hand, if we wanted to share something, because we we feel that this is important for the people, as it happened in '96 with the Multipla. I promise you, I mean, this car has been put in production exactly 100% the same, although the public was not totally fascinated by this car. No, it's like, okay, this is for us. It's important. We did, and also concept cars, even the poorer one. So a piece of resin milled by a very simple style, made on one computer station, is approximately is 1 million of cost, the pure cost of execution. And so today, companies are more aware to present something in terms of communication and in terms of idealization of concept. Although Alfa Romeo Tonale or everything we've shown recently will be done. So probably FCA is the most careful company in terms of promising something if has been already shown as a concept car.
Vladimir, ciao Mr. Giolito. Considering growing process of urbanization, how long SUV vehicles will stay relevant for masses of people? Thank you for your lecture and for Multipla.
I like this, the acronymous SUV. It's been a sport utility vehicle, so it's still to be explored in the real sense of the understanding, because sport utility means that this kind of cars will become sooner or later really the assistant for the sportive people. And today we have seen the proliferation of sports. My colleague Andrea Mainini is making is diving with a tuta, with a suit, wingsuit. I mean, he's making parapendio, climbing with bikes of the ultimate type. So, sporting people is an increasing population. I make sci di fondo. I don't know.
Yeah.
it's very light because the skis are lighter, or at least a ping pong, and so for me there's no reason for a large car. But anyway, sport utility will be of great interest in the future, and very much improved in terms also of differentiation by the mentality or the possibility to access them instead of possess them, because sometimes the 4x4 traction is expensive. The new technology and lighting a car of this complexity is more difficult than the urban car, and so they will exist. The proportion that we are still looking for of big wheels and a small body floating on this is particular. Is not wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong or right in the car industry. Some fashions, as in the fashion design industry, are accepted. No, there was a time where big wheels on a mostly coupe body or a tight body were the meaning of muscular or something more athletic. That is good. I mean, I'm looking at the Alfa Romeo Stelvio design. It's still fresh after 3-4 years after its debut. Still fresh, very, very athletic, and I like it. But how long this will last, I don't know. If the matter is to lower the floor on the back to load your carries, your luggage, this is not a matter to have the endless fighting from designers and engineers, where designers pretend to have the high separation line of the lift gate. Engineers want the very low separation line because they have in need the operation of the user. I'm as a designer, I will jump to the ultimate idea to create a cap as a lift gate or a different movement to don't have this problem. And so for this reason, sport utility will be the bench test for many years for different application of cars, how to load the cars in a more appropriate way. I have a Jeep Wagoneer of 1976, but this car is dated 1962, 63 as production, and was really in North America was a very different kind of car, because was helping families to move in the high snow in Illinois, Michigan, Nevada, to move to from house to the school, etc., where the response for a need. And so those the Grand Wagoneer, the Range Rover, were the ancestors of what we are looking today. If I see a car, a Gran Turismo with wheels of a Maserati Levante, I can understand this is a provocation. No comment. I mean, this is something that could like to someone and have a specific market.
Yeah, absolutely. Allora, there is Gaetano Dragone that asks, what do you advise as a starting point for product design students who want to have access in the car design world? Some advice for new and young guys.
I mean, so the passport to car design studios are always graphic. I mean, it's important to understand that the population inside the studio is still strongly based on a creative kind of sculptors or designers who are capable to communicate their ideas, also sketching directly on the paper, on a computer directly. So the idea is to calibrate the portfolio of presentation in a way to express a kind of directable and plausible innovation. To try to don't elude too much on the control of everything, because designers that are friends to the technology, friends to the engineering approach. I am the demonstration how I've been attached to some fields of innovation in my company, and I created the complementary part. And I understood something that I developed in my region of application. Try to don't create the one figure as Dante Giacosa of this millennium, because it's very difficult. Now we are organizing in a network of contacts where the weak signal is important, but you have to convey it to a large signal. And so to get in the organization, you have to be very, very honest with your skills, and to demonstrate really your strong application on the paths, on the processes. This is very important. Also, I expect to see some of your graduates designing new processes in the companies. How to get a result before. Now we have you are a TAD. You are the masters for for computer modeling, etc. Now today the polygonal, how the polygonal is creating NURBS or creating models to be tested in different applications for aerodynamics, for manufacturing. So a designer then can understand also that his or her product will face a complex reality, will be taken in great consideration, because we need serious people to understand that making cars is not the matter to create the right rendering. Although sketching and design in a fresh manner, as we say, is very important. I mean, so
obviously. Yeah. So I can. Okay, it's the time to stop, I think, because they are quite a 3:15. So I would like to thank you, Roberto.
Thank you.
If someone wants to stop with me, we can provide some answer for question to the master, because Alice Pignatel will be with us to answer to your question. And thank you so much, Roberto.
Thank you, everybody, for the attention. I apologize for my chaotic speaking, but I mean, I try something as rich as you. Okay.
So
Thank
Fausto,
you.
are you there? So.
Ciao, Fausto. Yeah, it's microphone off, but I say hello to Fausto.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for all your speech. Thank
Ciao,
you.
Fausto. See you next time. Ciao.
See you.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye, Roberto.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.